A homeless man was kicked out of a five-star restaurant. Then the owner walked in and everyone's face went pale. It was a freezing December night when Marcus Chun pushed open the heavy glass doors of Leclerc, the most exclusive restaurant in Manhattan, where a single reservation cost more than most people earned in a week. His clothes were worn, his jacket torn at the sleeve, his shoes held together with duct tape. Snow melted in his graying hair. He looked like he'd been living on the streets for months. Because he had been. But what no one in that glittering dining room knew, what no one could possibly imagine, was that Marcus Chun wasn't just any homeless man. He was the founder and majority shareholder of Chun Global Industries, a tech empire worth $7 billion. And tonight, he was about to teach everyone in that restaurant a lesson they would never forget. The moment Marcus stepped inside, the warmth hit his face like a wall. Crystal chandeliers threw golden light across marble floors. Women in diamonds laughed over champagne. Men in $1,000 suits cut into perfectly seared steaks. And every single head turned to stare at the man who clearly didn't belong. Marcus walked slowly toward the host stand, his worn boots squeaking against the polished floor. The host, a young man named Trevor with slicked-back hair and a thin smile, looked Marcus up and down like he was examining something he'd found on his shoe. "Can I help you?" Trevor said, his voice dripping with barely concealed disgust. Marcus cleared his throat. His voice was rough, tired. "I'd like a table, please. Just for one." Trevor's smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. "Sir, I'm afraid Leclerc operates on a reservation-only basis. And we have a strict dress code." He gestured vaguely at Marcus's appearance. "Perhaps there's a soup kitchen nearby that's still open?" A few nearby diners chuckled. Marcus felt the heat rise in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. "I can pay. I have money." Trevor laughed, actually laughed, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. "I'm sure you do, sir. Now please, leave before I have to call security." But Marcus didn't move. He stood there, his eyes scanning the room, watching the people who had everything look at the man who had nothing with such casual cruelty. And then he saw her. A young waitress, maybe 23, with kind eyes and dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her name tag read Sarah. She was watching the entire scene unfold, her face tight with discomfort. While Trevor continued to sneer at Marcus, Sarah disappeared into the kitchen. 30 seconds later, she returned with a small paper bag. She walked right past Trevor, right past the staring diners, and handed it to Marcus. "It's not much," she said quietly. "Just some bread and soup from tonight's batch. Please take it." Marcus looked down at the bag, then up at this young woman who'd shown him the only kindness he'd received all night. "Thank you," he whispered. But Trevor was furious. His face went red as a beet. "Sarah, what the hell do you think you're doing?" She turned to face him, her chin lifted. "I'm doing what any decent person would do." Trevor stepped closer, his voice rising. "You're giving away restaurant property to some bum off the street. That comes out of your paycheck. Actually, you know what? You're fired. Get out. Now." The entire restaurant had gone silent. Every fork was frozen mid-air. Every conversation had stopped. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She untied her apron with shaking hands, placed it on the host stand, and turned to leave. Marcus reached out and gently touched her arm. "Wait," he said. Then he turned to Trevor. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Trevor laughed again, that same cruel laugh. "Is that a threat?" "Security." Two large men in black suits started making their way across the dining room. But before they reached Marcus, the kitchen doors exploded open. A man in a pristine white chef's coat stormed out, his face a mask of fury. It was Philippe Arnaud, Leclerc's head chef and part owner, a man whose face had been on the cover of every food magazine in America. "What is happening in my restaurant?" he bellowed. Trevor straightened up, suddenly nervous. "Chef Arnaud, this homeless man was disrupting service, and this waitress was stealing food." Silence. Philippe's voice cracked like a whip. He walked straight to Marcus, his eyes wide, his mouth open in shock. And then Philippe Arnaud did something no one expected. He dropped to one knee. Right there, in the middle of his five-star restaurant, in front of every wealthy patron, he knelt before the homeless man. "Mr. Chun," Philippe whispered, his voice breaking. "My God. What happened to you? The restaurant erupted in confused whispers. Trevor's face went from red to white in an instant. Sarah stood frozen, her apron clutched in her hands. Marcus looked down at Philippe with tired eyes. Hello, Philippe. It's been a long time. Philippe stood, tears actually streaming down his face. Everyone, he shouted, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. This man you treated like garbage, is Marcus Chun. He is the reason Leclerc exists. 15 years ago, when I was a nobody cooking in a basement in Queens, when I had nothing, when every bank refused me a loan, Marcus Chun gave me $2 million to start this restaurant. He asked for nothing in return. He said he believed in me. And this is how we repay him. The diners sat in stunned silence. Trevor looked like he might vomit. Philippe turned on him like a wolf. You humiliated the man who built everything I have. You mocked him. You called security on him. Trevor stammered, his hands shaking. I didn't know. How could I have known? He looks like, Philippe's hand shot up. Like what? Like someone who needs help? Like someone who deserves compassion? Get out of my restaurant. You're finished. Not just here. I will make sure every establishment in this city knows what you did tonight. Security grabbed Trevor by the arms and dragged him toward the door, his protests falling on deaf ears. Philippe turned back to Marcus, his voice softening. But sir, please tell me. Why? Why are you like this? What happened? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, and everyone leaned forward to hear. 6 months ago, my wife died. Cancer. We'd been married for 32 years. After she passed, I realized I'd spent my entire life building an empire, making money, going to board meetings, attending galas just like this one. But I'd never actually lived. I'd never walked among the people my companies claimed to serve. So I gave myself 1 year. 1 year to live on the streets, to see how the other half survives, to understand what it means to have nothing. The restaurant was so quiet you could hear the chandeliers humming. I've been spit on, Marcus continued, his voice steady but filled with pain. I've been kicked. I've had food thrown at me. I've slept in the cold while hundreds of people walked past me like I was invisible. And tonight I came here to the restaurant I helped build, to see if maybe, just maybe, someone would see me as a human being. And everyone failed. Everyone. Except her. He turned and pointed at Sarah, who was still standing there, tears now streaming down her face. She was the only one. The only one in this entire palace of wealth and luxury who showed an ounce of humanity. She gave me food when she had nothing to gain and everything to lose. She stood up to her boss to help a stranger. That kind of courage, that kind of heart, that's worth more than everything in this room combined. Philippe looked at Sarah, then back at Marcus. What do you want me to do? Marcus smiled for the first time all night. I want you to make her your partner. 20% equity in Leclerc. I want her name on the door. I want her to never worry about money again. And I want her to have the power to hire and fire anyone in this establishment who forgets that every person who walks through that door, rich or poor, clean or dirty, deserves to be treated with dignity. The restaurant erupted. Some diners started clapping. Others sat in shame, their expensive meals suddenly tasting like ash in their mouths. Philippe nodded, tears still streaming. It will be done. Tonight. We'll have the papers drawn up immediately. He turned to Sarah. Miss Sarah, I am so sorry. For everything. Will you accept? Sarah couldn't speak. She just nodded, her whole body shaking with sobs. Marcus walked over to her and gently took both her hands. Thank you, he said softly. You reminded me that humanity still exists. You gave me hope on a night when I had none left. Never lose that light inside you. Never let this world make you cold. Philippe snapped his fingers and staff rushed forward. The private dining room. Now. Prepare the chef's tasting menu, the full experience, 20 courses. And bring our finest wine, the 1947 Chateau d'Yquem from my personal collection. He turned to Marcus and Sarah. Please both of you, let me serve you a meal worthy of the people you are, not the clothes you wear. As they were led toward the private dining room, Marcus paused and turned back to face the crowd. His voice rang out clear and strong. Look at yourselves. You sit here in your jewels and your suits, thinking you're better than everyone else because you can afford a $100 appetizer. But tonight, you failed the simplest test of human decency. You saw someone suffering and you laughed. Remember this moment. Remember how easily you became monsters. And ask yourselves, when the universe tests you again, and it will, what will you choose? Cruelty or compassion? Because that choice, that single choice, is the only thing that actually matters. The private dining room doors closed behind Marcus and Sarah. Philippe served them himself, every course a masterpiece, every moment filled with laughter and tears and redemption. Sarah kept saying she couldn't believe this was real. Marcus kept telling her it was the most real thing that had happened to him in months. Later that night, after the meal, after the contracts were signed, after Sarah had been transformed from a fired waitress into a restaurant owner, Marcus stood on the sidewalk outside Leclerc. Snow was falling again, soft and white and beautiful. Philippe stood beside him. "Will you continue?" Philippe asked quietly. "Your year on the streets?" Marcus nodded. "I have 6 months left. 6 more months to learn, to see, to understand. But now I know something I didn't know before tonight." "What's that?" "That there are still good people in this world. People like Sarah. People like you, who remembered where you came from. People who choose kindness even when it costs them everything. That's what I'll carry with me through the cold nights ahead. That's what will keep me going." Philippe embraced him, holding on tight. "Come back to us when your year is done. Come back and tell us what you learned." Marcus smiled. "I will. I promise." He turned and walked back into the snowy night, his torn jacket pulled tight, his worn boots crunching through fresh powder. But this time, he wasn't just a homeless man. He was a teacher, a seeker, a man who'd lost everything to find what truly mattered. And somewhere behind him, in a warm restaurant filled with light and the smell of perfect food, a young woman named Sarah was staring at legal documents that made her a millionaire, crying tears of joy and disbelief, and promising herself that she would never, ever forget what it felt like to have nothing. Because on this frozen December night, in the cruelest city in America, 2 strangers had reminded each other that humanity still existed. That one act of kindness could change everything. And that sometimes, the richest man in the room is the one wearing torn shoes and a grateful heart.